Hey guys, welcome back to my channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Today I'm going to be revealing one of my portfolios that's valued just over $20,000 and talking about each of the positions that I currently hold. Before we get into the video, please take a second to like, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's jump right in. Okay guys, so as promised, today we're going to be revealing my full portfolio. Now this is one of my stock accounts that I've opened fairly recently, probably about 5-6 months ago, and I actually invested $10,000 to open this account. So the goal with this one, as I was starting to think about YouTube, was to get a account that I could share with the public and essentially track my trades in here and allow you guys to see exactly what I'm doing in real time with real money. So the goal here was to put in $10,000 of my own money and see if we can get this one up to 100,000 is goal number one, and ultimately build this up to $1 million portfolio in the next coming years. Now this portfolio is made up of 10 different companies along with one option contract. I generally try not to trade options in this account. I have a separate account that I use for option trading exclusively. However, I did make an exception in this case because I do feel like there's tremendous upside, and we'll talk about that contract actually first in the video here. Now the way I've laid this out is we'll be talking about the stocks in order of my profit and loss. So we'll start with my newest positions that essentially are break even right now. We'll work our way down all the way to the bottom. The top position in this account is actually up over 260%, so we'll save that one for last. And we'll also talk a little bit about position sizing along the way. So first up here is a January 21st, 2022 $20 strike call on Dropbox. Now I actually just released a video on Friday talking about opening this position. So this one is very new. It was only opened a few days ago, and as you can see, it's break even right now. I purchased it for $8.10 per contract. I have 2 contracts. The price is currently sitting at $8.10, so I have made 0% on this position. This one represents $1,600 US and about 8% of my portfolio. Now you'll notice up in the top left hand corner here, I trade through Questrade. This is a brokerage account that I've chosen. In Canada, I feel like this is definitely one of the front runners. I've tried out a few, and this one definitely seems to fit my personal trading style well. I feel like the fees are affordable and it offers a good user interface, which is extremely important. It does allow me to trade options as well, so that's obviously important to me. So the second name we're going to talk about here is actually Valence, or the Valence Company. Now this was part of Friday's video as well when I actually initiated this position. This is a company that I hold in a lot of my portfolios. However, this is the first time I've held these shares in this account. Now this position represents 750 shares. This one is in Canadian currency, so you can see it trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange. I got in for $1.79, so 6% return in one day. I'm up $82, and this one represents 5% of my portfolio. Third on the list here is actually JP Morgan. So this is a bank stock, obviously one of the biggest banks in the US. I feel like this one is a good, stable company, really anchors my portfolio. I definitely don't have a ton of money in here. You can see it represents just under 4% of my total holdings. I am up just over 12.5%, so it's doing fairly well. This is definitely a slow and steady stock. It's not going to be a multi-bagger. It's important to have companies like this in your portfolio because they are kind of the backbone and they do add that stability that we talked about. So moving along to the fourth position here. Now this is actually Dropbox shares. So you'll see the first one was a Dropbox call option. This is going to be Dropbox shares. If you watch my video on Friday, I actually sold 65 shares out of this position. So I was sitting at 230 shares. I sold 65, and that was in order to finance this call option position here. At the start of the video, I said I don't generally hold options in this account. This is the one that I made the exception for because, as mentioned in Friday's video, I'm extremely bullish on Dropbox, and I really wanted to diversify out of the shares and get a more aggressive position with bigger upside potential. So that's why I did decide to split my holding on Dropbox into partial option, partial share. In terms of the shares themselves, I do still hold 165. So this is actually my largest position in this account. It represents just under 20% of the portfolio. So we'll talk about position sizing in a second here, but I did want to go through the math. So I paid just under $19.50 per share for this. I opened this position a few months back. So we've actually done relatively well. We're up over 25, almost 30% in the last 3 to 4 months. Dropbox is sitting just under $25 a share right now, so the book value on this position is about $3,200 with the market value close to $41. So this one's doing phenomenal. We're up almost $1,000 US on this, and as mentioned, it's sitting just under 20% of the total portfolio. Now, one of the major lessons I've learned over my years of investing is position sizing and ensuring that you don't get too heavy in any one name. So I, as a general rule of thumb, will not hold over 20% of an account in one company. Now, I've kind of broken my rule here because I do own call options as well as shares. So if you were to put these together, we're sitting close to 30%, 28%. However, they are a little bit diversified because options do act differently than shares, and they're also time bound. So as a general rule of thumb, 20% in any one name is kind of the maximum I like to have. Now, if we see Dropbox run big in the next couple of weeks, and this does get up close to 25, 30, 40%, that's okay in the short term, but it's definitely something that I'm going to want to look at rebalancing. Generally, I like to look every maybe quarter or 3 months in the account and just see if any names feel a little bit too heavy or have a little bit too much exposure in any one specific company, industry, or field. Now, the reason I took a second to talk about that position sizing is I can't stress enough how important that is. A lot of times new traders will get extremely excited about one or two names and they'll fill their entire portfolio with just a few companies. Now, that can work to your advantage if those companies do well, but generally it's extremely risky as no one can predict the future and even the best companies stumble or have issues. So I would highly recommend you set yourself a personal position cap. Doesn't matter if it's 10%, 20, 30, 40, whatever the case is, but whatever you can sleep comfortably with at night, and you make sure that you follow these rules. This is the number one thing I can't stress enough to new traders, and it's something that seems to go by the wayside as people gain experience and gain practical knowledge. They think they don't have to listen to these rules, and that's actually when you'll get hurt or get burned. So moving into the next name here, we have Walgreens Boots Alliance. I've released a few videos on this now. This one's another company that I'm extremely excited about. I currently hold 20 shares here. I got them for just under $39. Now we're sitting close to 50. So this one is up about 30% as well, $224 profit. And this actually represents about 5% of my overall portfolio. So this is an example of a company that I may add to if, for example, Dropbox were to go on a run and get up over that 25-30% of my portfolio. This is actually a company I may look to pull money out of Dropbox and actually add to Walgreens. The nice thing with having a portfolio of about 10 companies is you can actually get to know these companies inside and out. I've seen a lot of people that have portfolios with 20, 25, 30 names in there, and it's nearly impossible to stay up to date with all the news, conference calls, earnings reports for that many companies. I much rather have a small basket of stocks that I know extremely well. Now, that being said, even with 10 positions or 10 stocks, you can definitely look for opportunities. And that's what's nice is if you're confident in all of the names in your portfolio and you do have to do some rebalancing, you can literally look at whatever's kind of having an off day, off week, off month. And that's where you can invest your money if you want to start cycling or moving some cash through the account to get those position sizes back under 20% in my situation. Next up on the list, we have Beyond Meat. So this is another one that I've released some videos on. This is another company that I would like to grow this position, ultimately get up maybe close to 20 or 25 shares. I got in here at 127, just about 128. We're sitting up close to 170. Beyond actually released some big news a couple weeks ago, and this went north of 200 for a short time. So I actually unloaded some of my shares at that point, and I am looking to buy back in. However, right now, the position's up about $328, 32% profit, and currently sits at about 6.5% of my total portfolio. After Beyond Meat, we've got Skyworks Solutions. So this is a big iPhone chip supplier. They actually have, I think, 7 or 8 chips in the new iPhone. This is a phenomenal company. They just released earnings last week and absolutely crushed. I only have 4 shares in here. This is another one that I'd like to add to. Got in for 135. We're sitting now close to 180. This position's up nearly 33%. This one actually only represents 3.5% of my portfolio. So these 3 stocks are some great examples of where maybe I could spread out that Dropbox investment a little bit more. Following Skyworks, we've got Planet 13. So this is a big MJ company in the US. MJ, I feel like, is an industry that's poised for some massive growth over the next couple years. I personally think federal legalization in the US is coming within the next 12 to 18 months. So I definitely want some exposure in this area. In some of my other accounts, I have large positions in the MJ industry. So in this account, I've tried to really limit myself. However, between Valens and Planet 13, it does represent about 16-17% of my portfolio. Now I got into Planet 13 just under 465. It's now sitting at 780. So this one's actually up nearly 70%, which is phenomenal. $1,300 profit so far, and it's got a market value of $3,200. So it is actually one of my bigger positions in this account. Next up, we've got the Bitcoin fund. So I've got the Bitcoin fund here on the Toronto exchange, and you'll see also on the US exchange. So these are essentially the exact same ETF. The reason I did this is just to spread out my risk in terms of currency or exchange rate exposure. I've got 15 shares on the Toronto exchange. I bought these ones for just under $29 Canadian. They're sitting up over 55 right now. So we're up almost 93% on this, $400 or 3% of my total portfolio value. On the US side, we've got 25 shares, paid just over $17 US, and they're up close to 43.5. So this one's actually up over 150%, which is phenomenal, and represents about 5% of the account. So between the two, it's about 8% exposure to Bitcoin, which is probably the most I'm comfortable with. I definitely am bullish on cryptocurrency. However, I don't want to put a ton of my money in there. As we've talked about in some of my prior videos, I really prefer tangible assets, companies, real estate, stuff like that. Although crypto does seem to be the future, it's a little bit hard to wrap your head around, and definitely not where I want to put the lion's share of my investments. So finally, the 10th name on the list here is Upwork. You can see this one's up over 260%, so it's the big winner in the account as of right now. I originally had about 107 shares. I've since sold half of those, so 50 of those are now sitting in the closed column. I currently have 57 shares in the open column. I paid an average of $14.32 for these, and they're currently sitting at $51.59. Now the book value on this is only $800, but you can see market value is up close to $3,000. So this is a massive profit. We're up over $2,100 on the position that's still open, and not to mention the money that I've actually cashed out or closed on this name. And this one represents about 14% of the account. So that was a practical example of when the position got too big. So you can see here, if I wouldn't have sold any shares, we'd be up close to $6,000 in Upwork. That would have put us well above that 20% cap or rule that I have for myself. So this is an example of where I needed to sell off some of the position and diversify into some other names. So that's it for today's video, you guys. You can see here, that's the full list of holdings in this personal account. Now, as mentioned at the start of the video, I've put $10,000 into this account. It's sitting just north of $21,000 now. So we're about a fifth of the way to that first goal of $100,000. And as promised, I'll continue to document all my trades in this account so you can watch the evolution and growth of this account on our journey to six figures. That's it for today's video. If you haven't already, please make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and have a great rest of your day.